I'm joined once again by a friend from Australia, the executive producer and founder of Walkabout Films, Lizzy Nash.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Lizzy, I got an email from you the other day with a lot of news about what's going on in Australia. Where you are now is different than where you'll be on July 1st. That's part of the news. So right now, tell me what's going on now and tell me what changes on July 1st.
Well, look, things have actually been changing almost weekly. So currently, cafes and restaurants are open to 100 patrons, considering social distance. But 2 weeks ago, there was a maximum, of 50 patrons. Whereas come July 1, there's no restriction at all, as long as there's social distancing and being mindful of the 4 metre square distance. It was even the other night, on Saturday night, I was driving and I could not believe, just the energy that is around at the moment, people lining up to get into different places and so forth. And it just feels like people are definitely back and people are out. There are quite a few shoots on last week. And obviously I've got my ear to the ground and I speak to crew all the time. Come July, it might be even less restrictive or on shoots than what we think. I don't know. It's just changing at such a rapid pace.
What's the story with the number of cases of COVID-19?
But they're very, very small numbers.
Lizzy, you wrote me about about studios and about features restarting. Tell me what's going on right now and what are you anticipating over the summer on features and commercials?
I actually was ringing Fox Studios to inquire about a studio for ourselves.
That's good news.
They're fully booked. So Marvel is resuming July, August, and they will be fully booked after that. Definitely the commercials are revving up here, some local, some international. I was aware that last week there was definitely an international shoot with an international director that was shooting down here, remote streaming. And then on top of that, there was a local job, an international job, but with a local director. And then there's other, local commercials going on. So it definitely feels like it's hotting up. I spoke to one of my first ADs and he said he's fully booked now until the end of July. So we're definitely back.
Have you done any budgets under this phase or projecting forward for the next phase? Are you bidding shorter days, more days? And what percentage, what are you allowing for on-set protocols?
It does increase time and it does increase budgets to a degree as well. I guess it just depends on whether it's a location, you have to go in there the day before, COVID cleans before you actually start setting up sets and things like that. So it does definitely add time.
What about creative that you're seeing? Is it changed at all from what we were seeing at the end of last year?
Some of it definitely is. Some of it's much smaller, documentary style and completely considerate of what's going on. And also I think what probably they want depicted worldwide or in your country or wherever it may be. And people are definitely still thinking of that. But then we are definitely seeing things that you start to have more complicated elements within the scripts. And by August, that'll be different as well.
I want to thank you, Lizzy Nash, from Walkabout News, World Headquarters, in front of your map of the world, where, by the way, I cannot see Australia on that map. I'm assuming it's there. I'm assuming it's there.
It's there. Look, it's there.
Wrong
Hang
way.
on.
There we go. And now coming to us from the offices of Radke Films in Toronto, which is news in itself, is executive producer and head of production and member of CPAT and all that other stuff. Tony DiMarco, good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you too.
Tony, let's start with what's going on in Canada before we get to production. Give me an idea of where we are, trending up, trending down.
Yeah, we've been able to flatten the curve pretty much across the country. There are several production centers now open for business. Toronto proper is not, but Ontario is opening up.
When do you anticipate Toronto will open?
I'm hopeful that we'll hear on Monday that we'll be open by Friday. That's been the trend here that they've been announcing 5 days in advance. So far, pretty well all the regions except for the region of Peel and the Greater Toronto area are in what we're calling phase 2, which allows for filming here.
What's going on in Vancouver?
Vancouver's pretty much open for business. It's with social distancing and various health and safety protocols, it's pretty well open for business. You can shoot almost anything there at this point.
So you can go to Vancouver, have a full crew with social distancing, probably some slowdowns on how things are managed and done.
Yeah. Montreal is very much the same. They're actively looking at all projects, and we'll be able to advise you once they see the script if it is achievable in either market. But Vancouver seems to be open for business across the board.
So you're thinking Toronto, if you had to guess, July 1?
July 1st is Canada Day, so maybe not July 1st, but July 2nd, we should be fully operational.
What about the borders? When do you think the borders might be open, and would there be a mandatory 14-day quarantine?
The borders are still temporarily closed between the two countries for non-essential travel until July 21st, I believe. We should be hearing within a week or so of that, if that will relax.
I imagine with the jobs you've been doing, you've had to add money for COVID protocols. I would imagine you've had to keep the days at either 10 or 12s. We spoke last time about making the cruise as lean as possible. Do you find that that is increasing budgets? Are you balancing them out because the cruise is smaller? How's it working?
I would say there's definitely an increase. I think like we spoke about last time, there is a loss of productivity. So I think the conversation is more about how much we can do in a day, not so much about the added cost of the PPE and COVID protocols. I don't think COVID protocols is a percentage. I think it is a kind of almost a roughly fixed cost. I would say maybe it's going to add between $8,500 and $9,500 a day for the health safety coordinators, the healthcare professionals, PPE, wash stations. So that's a bit of a fixed cost. It's not a percentage. There is a lot of incentives with the dollar right now, for sure. And also Toronto being a very affordable place to shoot in general.
Tony, I've had this very agency-centric idea in my head that if you add whatever you add for the COVID safety protocols, but your crew is leaner, it might all cancel each other out. Your production costs would pretty much be the same. True, false, or am I dreaming?
All of the above, really. We're not limited in crew size like we thought we would be coming out of the gate. The costs have gone up. Crew sizes may come down a bit, but I don't suspect it's going to come down as much as we thought it would.
You guys did a lot of work. You put protocols in place, and you kind of did it in a theoretical basis. Do you find they're all working the way you thought, or if you had to make any big changes?
It's too soon to tell, really. We're still working out the kinks, quite honestly. I think that our protocols are very much in line with the global protocols that we've been all receiving, but it's too soon to tell how much adjustment will happen, but I do expect some things to change.
What kind of jobs have you been doing at Radke?
Yes, starting 3 weeks ago, we were still doing user-generated content type work, primarily be sending a drop card or a drop kit off to people's homes and letting them film themselves.
Right.
We've just been awarded a project that's going to Vancouver that is a car project. Now we're starting to see regular projects and boards that are almost pre-COVID boards.
And I see now that you are in the office of Radke Films.
We're not fully open for business here. We are, as execs, coming in as needed. We expect next week the laws will relax a little bit and we'll start to see more people.
DiMarco from Radke Films. Look forward to seeing you soon, and I want to hear about great stuff happening up in Toronto this summer.
Thanks,
Tony.
Thank you so much.
Axel Brink and Polo Luisetti from Casa Films in Chile.
Bob, thank you very much for having us.
Let's get an update first about what's going on in Chile, and then we can talk about production.
2 weeks ago, we were doing very well. Government was feeling very confident, but I will say that 1 week ago, everything changes and they have to do a step back. It means that we are in a severe quarantine right now, who extended for 2 weeks more. It's supposed to finish last week. So we are at the peak of the pandemic right now. Yeah, that's the case in Santiago. And Santiago is in a complete lockdown.
You guys were very optimistic that by this point, when we last spoke at end of May, it was looking very promising for opening back up.
Speaking for Patagonia, where I am, we're still at very low case load. Where I am, what we're doing here is doing absolutely self-contained remote shoots. We're offering a different product. We're still free to move in Patagonia. I don't know if there's any specific advantage of doing that currently in Chile over anywhere else. And for Patagonia, what we can offer is a much more basic camera package where we can go into outdoor landscapes with snow, with wild Patagonian landscapes. We can do a production as a solution if you absolutely need to shoot your product against an epic landscape. Basically, that's what we can offer in Chile right now, especially specifically for Patagonia. Basically, we have everything available in Chile for pretty much 98% of the car shoots that we've ever done, we currently have the equipment in Santiago on standby. So that wouldn't be much of an issue.
So Chile, as I said, you guys are pretty disappointed. Things were going one way and all of a sudden there was a spike. And I think that's a lesson we could probably all take heed of. Let's talk a little bit about Uruguay, because we discussed that last time, that Uruguay was pretty far ahead of everybody else.
So Uruguay currently has managed to contain COVID-19 cases to a very, very, very low level. So basically the country is similar to New Zealand, similar to those countries which are out of it. It's not completely out yet, but you can function quite normally within the borders with protocol limitations, obviously. We've done a few jobs so far. We have another job coming up this next week. Basically, shoot crew size is up to 50 people. High level, technical, basic level we've always used. Alexa, properly lit, properly photographed. We have very good DPs in Uruguay. We have a good pool of casting. It's diverse casting. It is one of the better countries right now. The government's helped a lot. Yeah, it is open for business again, Uruguay.
It's work with what's in Uruguay, which you guys think is pretty good.
85% of our normal jobs would be completely fulfilled with Uruguayan talent, and the other 15% to 10% normally we would have brought in from Argentina.
What about Buenos Aires? What about Argentina? What's going on there? I'm almost afraid to ask.
Every week, basically, they say, okay, it's going to reopen for limited, and they've been extending that. So we're still not open in Argentina. We're still awaiting news. They are feeding it with I don't know what you call it, with an eyedropper or something like that. There's a saying.
And Buenos Aires is still locked down, so no more news.
Chile, in Santiago, drop off packages at people's homes. That's about the extent of it. Patagonia can do a limited crew, but a legitimate shoot.
Right.
Certainly exteriors, interiors, TBD.
We can do interiors. I mean, I don't think there would be an advantage in coming to Patagonia to do interiors. What we're offering in Patagonia basically is resolving your more basic need to shoot an epic landscape with your product in it.
And Buenos Aires, the largest city we shoot in South America, which has the most equipment, the most talent, is just no-go and no real projection on when things are going to happen, right?
Exactly so.
Okay.
That's correct.
Polo and Axel, as always, thank you so much for your time. Check back with you guys in a couple of weeks, and hopefully the outbreak in Santiago calms down and you guys can get back to business sooner rather than later. Thank you so much.
Same for you, Bob.
Once again, we say hi to our friend Avelino Rodriguez, joining me today from Mexico City. He is, of course, the founder and managing director of The Lift. Tell me what's going on in Mexico City.
They open up stoplight system. At this moment, we have 32 states in Mexico. 16 are already in the orange, and Mexico City is about to switch to the orange level.
From what to the orange level?
From red to orange.
Encouraging.
When we move to orange, in terms of film shoots, we can host up to 30 people on set. When we move to yellow, 75. When we move to green, it's unlimited.
Unlimited, right.
We were able to do a project for our friends at Some Such.
Right, last time we spoke, you told me about that. How'd it go?
I think it went very well. We tested with PCR test the whole crew. We tested 47 people. 7 of them came out positive. So that was a good effort because they were asymptomatic. So the way that they found it out was because of this job. And that's when the people started to understand the relevance of taking care of themselves, starting from trusting us in testing them and, taking all these measures when they go to set.
I wasn't going to talk to you about technology or testing or too many of the protocols, but you tested 47 people.
We did it during the pre-production period. So we are taking more time to select the crew. We tested more people than the people that we actually needed, because I think that we are going to be able to negotiate to be out shooting with very small crews as long as we preserve the integrity of the people.
That's pretty fascinating. I'm not only shooting a commercial, but performing kind of a public health service at the same time.
We need to create the people that were devoted to the experience of our clients during their stay in Mexico. Now they are focused on the health and protection. But now the experience is not for the client, but also for the crew members.
Did you find that all the testing, all the rehearsal, all the research you had done worked well in those shoots? in that shoot? I'm sorry.
Yes, it went very well. And as a prototype, it really become and set the standard. What we did is that we apply all the protocols that came out from the film chamber that we were working at for, with all the production community involved. It's like everyone was paying attention to the shoot because we were implementing all the protocols that they were coming in.
Did it go the way you thought it would go?
So, it was a simple situation inside a house on a kitchen. The elements were pretty controllable. I think that when we start to open up to more elements, then we will see new challenges and we will need to start to adapt. One big learning, I think, is no rush. That's one of the things that is going to be a permanent change. Like all this rush that was in production or changes of mind and opinion and everything was at some point stressing the process and needed immediate reaction for the people. That immediate reaction now can be seen as a vulnerable situation.
Is it getting busier?
We had a momentum. I think that Black Lives Matter slowed down that momentum. Probably that's my guess. In terms of brand communication, there were other reflections that needed to be done before keep on pushing the momentum for coming out from the COVID.
Yes.
So I think that we felt that has slowed down a little bit the number of leads. Let's see how it goes. Because now we are starting to see other variables. Because now it's health, safety, but also is insecurity. How likely is it that Mexico will become appealing again? So we are not worried about other countries' competition because Mexico will stay geographically where it is. And it will be still very convenient for the US market, which is our core market. There will be still definitely a production relationship between the two countries. Is it going to be as intense? Not at the beginning. Is it going to be as intense later on in the time? Maybe yes, maybe not, depending on how advertising evolves over that time frame as well. But of course that we have this, the entertainment coming in, and that gives us a lot of latitude to experiment and get to know how shooting is in this new normal. And we are definitely going to use all of that knowledge in order to keep on pushing for our core business, which is international commercials. And it is not just that we have it as a core business, but it's because we really love that part of the business. And we really enjoyed that. And that's what we've put all our efforts on.
I appreciate the hopefulness of what you're saying. And we'll watch your stoplight situation and we'll check back in with you from time to time. Avelino Rodriguez, the founder and managing director of The Lift. Thank you again for checking in with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob.
And from Auckland today, who else? Katie Kempe, the executive producer and founder, Cherokee Films. Hi, Katie.
Hello, Bob. How are you?
Well, I'm good, but I don't think I'm as good as you because from what I'm gathering, things are almost completely back to normal in New Zealand.
It's been amazing. Filming is back to normal and there is more production happening, a lot of long form. Domestic long form, which was starting up when we spoke last time. And now there are more international crews getting permission to come back in. Domestic projects are shooting. We now have permission, even with short-term projects, to bring in limited crew on an international TVC. But the permission process initially takes about 2 to 3 weeks. And then there is the 14-day quarantine.
So if there was, say, a freelance agency producer who wanted to come down there to work on a project, if you had 2 or 3 weeks, you could get permission and then 14 days in the nicest hotel in Auckland and you're all set.
Not quite, but not quite. So the government controls the hotel. Quarantine is going to be more strict. Piercing of the bubble, we should call it, with these 2 active cases is because of a leniency in quarantine. It also it's going to depend on the project in the sense of how many people need to come in and what is not so much the financial gain, but that in aside with how does New Zealand benefit from this project.
So Avatar got that permission. They brought people in. You're expecting, if it hasn't happened already, Lord of the Rings, Amazon's Lord of the Rings series.
There are 1, 2, 3, 4 that I know of, 4 additional long formats that are in the process of bringing the crew back. And there are new projects coming in that weren't on the slate before COVID-19. It's because of the fact that we can now, under level 1, because we're at level 1, we can now have any number of people. I'm bidding jobs right now and with multiple extras, 100, 200, 400 extras. If conditions change at the border and if there are more cases, there is the possibility of moving back up to a level. So it's just something we're going to have to stay fluid when we're bidding, when we're talking about logistics, and just be aware and vigilant and just smart about how we approach bidding a job and doing the job. But we're seeing more remote shoots as well, which is great. I think there have been 4 remote shoots in the last number of weeks.
Let me ask you some questions about bidding and shooting, if you don't mind. Are you finding that COVID protocols, even at this level, are adding costs to production, or are you doing shorter days?
Certain costs and approaches need to still be taken for health and safety. So I'm still leaving those in. Crews, we can reduce depending on the logistics and the type of location you're shooting in. I mean, our prep crews can reduce, or the servicing crew that we're looking after agency and client, that can reduce. But if you've got a cast of 250 people, you still need the same amount of ADs, makeup artists, stylists to get through your shoot day as quickly as you can. It's going to depend on a job by job basis as to, where the savings are and where the additional costs are.
Are directors still working remotely, or are they willing to come over and do the quarantine? How's that all working out?
At the moment, only remotely. If someone does travel down here, which is great, but if they do and borders are shut down or restrictions are put in place, what are the parameters for people getting stuck in different countries?
You can go to New Zealand and shoot, folks. If you have
limited crew numbers, only limited crew numbers would be allowed in at this point. The process will take 2 to 3 weeks to get permissions. And then what you would do is arrive in New Zealand, do your 14 days of quarantine at a government designated and controlled hotel. And during the 14 days, your entry visa that immigration would have given you initially will be changed into a work visa.
It certainly seems like you guys will have a much more robust winter than you used to having.
I think possibly. And they've also been what's been exciting, I've seen a test of the remote streaming down in a very remote area of the South Island, not far from Queenstown. They're in a place where you can't get cell reception. And suddenly they're sending out these amazing images of beautiful scenery via remote streaming back to Auckland. Katie, that's great news for you guys. And I think great news is a real alternative for people from all over the world to go down. Bob, I have to agree. And I think, if there are any freelance agency producers around there that, want to call New Zealand home. I can only think of a few. Maybe one in particular, but anyway. No. Katie Kempe from Cherokee Films in New Zealand. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thanks, Bob. Lovely talking to you. Thanks, Katie. Okay.